I had been working in a corporate job for almost 5 years, and while it wasn't the worst gig, it definitely wasn't the dream. The 9-to-5 grind had worn me down, and I began to question my life choices. Every day felt like the same. I'll wake up, work, come home, eat, sleep, repeat. I had been living for the weekends, and even those felt like just brief moments of escape from a life I wasn't fully living. One afternoon, while sitting at my desk in front of a computer screen that felt colder than usual, I thought to myself, I can't keep doing this. There's got to be something more to life than this. So, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to quit my job immediately, because the safety net of a steady paycheck kept me from fully jumping off the cliff. But I would start exploring side hustles. I had no idea what to do, but I was ready to try anything. For weeks, I Googled ways to make money online and scrolled through Reddit, YouTube, and blogs. I felt overwhelmed, but I knew I needed something to break free from the monotony. One day, I stumbled upon a YouTube video of a guy talking about print-on-demand businesses. I had never heard of it before, but it instantly piqued my interest. The concept was simple. You create designs for products like t-shirts, mugs, and phone cases, and then you upload them to a platform that handles the printing and shipping. You don't have to deal with inventory, and you earn a cut of each sale. I thought to myself, this could be my ticket out of this dead-end corporate job. I dove into the world of print-on-demand and decided to focus on creating designs for t-shirts. The learning curve was steep at first. I didn't know anything about design software, and I didn't have the budget to hire a designer. But I was determined. I started learning how to use Photoshop, even though the process felt like I was learning a new language. I took free courses, watched tutorials, and practiced for hours. For weeks, I cranked out t-shirt designs. Some were good, others were terrible, but I was getting better. I uploaded my designs to a print-on-demand platform, connected it to my website, and waited. Days passed. Nothing. I tried running ads on Facebook, Instagram, and Google, but still, no sales. I felt defeated. Maybe this wasn't for me after all. Maybe it was just another failed idea. But I refused to quit. I knew I had to pivot. I started researching how to build a brand and market myself more effectively. I realized my designs weren't the problem. It was my approach. I needed to build an audience first. So, I switched gears and decided to focus on Instagram. I began posting regularly, sharing my journey as an entrepreneur, behind-the-scenes content of my design process, and engaging with others in the print-on-demand space. Slowly but surely, people started following me. In the beginning, the engagement was low. A like here and there, a comment every few posts. But then something clicked. I created a design that connected with people. It was a simple but catchy phrase that resonated with the growing hustle culture movement. I posted it, and it went viral. My DMs exploded with messages of support, and the sales started rolling in. The orders were small at first, but it was enough to keep me going. I saw the potential. I knew that if I kept at it, I could scale this business. Within a few months, I had made enough to quit my corporate job. It wasn't a lot of money at first, but I had enough saved up to give me a cushion while I went full-time with my print-on-demand business. I was ecstatic, but also terrified. I had no idea if it would work long-term, but I felt a sense of freedom I had never experienced before. As my business grew, I learned more about the power of branding. I expanded my designs to include more than just t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, phone cases, and hats. I partnered with influencers in niche markets to help promote my products. I invested in better advertising, refined my targeting, and improved my website to make the buying process easier for customers. I also started offering discounts and promotions to keep people coming back. The first year after quitting my job was a roller coaster ride. There were days when I felt like I was on top of the world, and others when I thought I had made the biggest mistake of my life. But I kept going, learning from my mistakes and tweaking my approach. One of the biggest turning points came when I realized I needed to stop treating my business as a side hustle and start treating it like a real business. I hired a virtual assistant to help with customer service, set up automated systems to handle orders, and started delegating tasks so I could focus on growing the brand. By the end of year 2, I was making more money than I ever did at my corporate job. And not only that, I was finally in control of my own life. I had built a business that was scalable and sustainable. The hustle culture that had once felt draining was now empowering. I woke up every day excited to work, to create, and to grow. My life had transformed in ways I never thought possible. But success didn't come without its challenges. There were months when sales dropped, and I questioned whether I could keep going. There were times when I had to fight off burnout, and moments when I felt alone in my journey. However, I had learned that failure wasn't the end, it was part of the process. I had faced so many setbacks, but each one had taught me something new. The key was persistence and adaptability. As my business continued to grow, I expanded into other areas, such as digital products and courses teaching others how to start their own print-on-demand businesses. I built a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who supported each other. What started as a simple idea to escape my corporate job had turned into a thriving, multifaceted business. And the best part? I no longer had to rely on anyone else for my income or happiness. Now, 3 years later, I look back on my journey with a sense of pride and gratitude. I never would have guessed that a random YouTube video about print-on-demand would lead me here. I've learned that success isn't just about having a great idea. It's about the willingness to work hard, learn from mistakes, and never give up. My story isn't unique, but it's proof that if you're willing to put in the effort, take risks, and keep going, anything is possible. If I had stayed in my corporate job, I would still be living the same life, one of routine and resignation. But by taking a chance on myself, I turned my life around. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in the driver's seat. I'm building the life I want, and that's all that matters. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I remember the first time I thought I could start my own business. It was a simple idea. No grand plan, no business degree, just a gut feeling that I could offer something better than what was out there. I had been working at a 9-to-5 job in a small marketing firm for almost 2 years. It wasn't a terrible job, but the pay was low and the work was monotonous. One day, during a coffee break, I overheard a conversation between a couple of my colleagues. They were talking about their struggles with the marketing strategies they had tried for their own side hustles. Some had tried dropshipping, others had built simple e-commerce sites, but none had been able to scale their businesses. That's when it hit me. The common thread in their failures wasn't the idea, it was the execution. These were smart, ambitious people who just didn't have the right guidance. They were trying to learn everything themselves, piecing together bits of advice from online forums and YouTube videos, but there was no clear roadmap. I began to think about what I could offer. I realized that I could create a consultancy business that would help small business owners navigate the complexities of digital marketing. The more I thought about it, the more I knew I had to take action. But where do you start when you have no money, no experience, and no guarantee of success? I didn't have the luxury of quitting my job outright. I had bills to pay, student loans looming, and a car payment that always seemed to be due. But I did have something more valuable than money: time. So I started small, working on my business late at night and on weekends. I learned everything I could about digital marketing, from SEO to social media strategies. I spent hours on free courses, watched countless tutorials, and even reached out to successful entrepreneurs who were willing to share their experiences. My first step was building a website. I figured if I was going to sell digital marketing services, I needed to have a presence online. It took me weeks to build a basic site, but I was proud of it. It was nothing fancy, just a simple portfolio that outlined the services I offered and a blog where I shared my thoughts on marketing trends. Once the website was up and running, I started reaching out to small businesses in my area, offering them a free marketing audit in exchange for feedback and a testimonial. The first response I got was a local bakery. They had an old website that barely functioned and no real social media presence. I offered them a complete audit and a strategy for improving their online visibility. They were skeptical at first, but I assured them I could help. It was a risk, but I took it. After a few weeks of work, the bakery started seeing results. Their website traffic increased, their social media following grew, and they even saw a bump in sales. They were thrilled, and when I asked for a testimonial, they were more than happy to give one. That testimonial became my first piece of social proof. With that success under my belt, I was able to land my next client, a small fitness studio. They were struggling to attract new members and had almost no digital presence. I applied the same strategies I had used with the bakery, tweaking them for the fitness industry. It didn't take long before the studio began seeing more inquiries, and within 2 months, they had signed up a significant number of new clients. The momentum started building. Slowly but surely, I gained more clients and increased my rates. I realized that the key to scaling wasn't just about attracting clients, it was about building systems that allowed me to work more efficiently. I began automating some of my processes, like client onboarding, reporting, and even social media management. This freed up my time, which I could then use to take on more clients. As my reputation grew, so did the size of the businesses I was working with. I started helping mid-sized companies, some of which were doing 7 figures in revenue. Each client presented new challenges, but I was learning on the job. And the more I learned, the more I could offer my clients. I became known not just as a digital marketer, but as someone who could help businesses grow, not just online, but across all areas of their operation. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. There were plenty of moments when I thought about giving up. I'll never forget the time I took on a client who was a complete nightmare. They were a fashion retailer, and despite all my best efforts, their expectations were unrealistic. They demanded constant updates and made unreasonable requests. It took a toll on me, both mentally and financially. At one point, I was tempted to walk away from the business entirely. But then I remembered why I started. I didn't want to be just another person stuck in a job they hated. I wanted to build something of my own, something that could provide real value to others. So, I stuck it out. Eventually, I was able to part ways with that client, and I learned some hard lessons along the way. Over the next few years, my business grew exponentially. I was able to hire a small team to help me with various aspects of the business, including graphic design, copywriting, and analytics. I didn't want to manage everything myself, so I focused on client acquisition, strategy, and overall business development. The success of the business allowed me to create more of a lifestyle that I had envisioned, one where I had time to travel, spend with family, and pursue other passions. But it wasn't always about the money. It was about the freedom that came with being my own boss. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned over the years. Starting a business isn't easy, and the path is rarely linear. There are days when everything seems to fall into place, and there are days when it feels like the world is against you. But the key to success isn't about avoiding the obstacles, it's about pushing through them. Each setback, each failure, is just a lesson in disguise. And if you're willing to learn, grow, and adapt, you'll eventually get to where you want to be. Now, my company serves clients all over the country, and I've started to branch out into different industries. I've invested in other businesses and even started a mentorship program for aspiring entrepreneurs. But no matter how far I go, I always remember where I came from, the late nights, the doubt, and the first client who trusted me to help their business. It was the foundation of everything that followed. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that there's no magic formula for success. It's all about persistence, learning from your mistakes, and being willing to take risks. The path may not always be clear, but if you have the determination and the right mindset, you can build something great. I never thought I'd become an entrepreneur. In fact, growing up, I had zero interest in business or anything remotely related to it. My goal was simple. I wanted to help people, and that meant becoming a doctor. But life, as it often does, threw me a curveball I never saw coming. It all started when I was in college. I was studying pre-med, grinding away in classes I found to be both challenging and rewarding. I was on track to graduate in 4 years, attend medical school, and eventually become a doctor. I had the whole path mapped out in my head. But life doesn't care about your plans. One day, during my sophomore year, I was walking through campus when I saw a flyer for a hackathon event. It was the kind of thing that usually would have slipped right under my radar. But for some reason, something about that flyer caught my attention. I had no background in coding, no interest in tech, and absolutely no idea what a hackathon even was. But there was something in my gut telling me I had to attend. So, on a whim, I signed up. I thought I'd at least get a free t-shirt and maybe meet some cool people. Little did I know, that decision would completely change the course of my life. The hackathon was a whirlwind. I didn't have a team and barely knew how to code, but I was determined to contribute. I ended up teaming up with a group of strangers, and we worked on building an app that could help students connect with local volunteer opportunities. We didn't win the hackathon, but we did end up creating something that people genuinely found useful. When the event was over, I found myself oddly excited. I didn't just enjoy the process. I loved the problem solving, the creativity, and the sheer rush of building something from nothing. The whole experience left me thinking about how I could bring that same level of innovation to the medical field. For the next few months, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant to do something more with tech. I began taking coding courses in my spare time, using resources like Code Academy and Free Code Camp. It was slow going, but I was persistent. I started learning how to build websites, apps, and even played around with AI. It was hard to juggle this with my medical studies, but the excitement I felt every time I wrote a line of code kept me going. As I continued to learn, I started brainstorming ideas on how technology could improve healthcare. One idea, in particular, stood out to me. What if we could create a platform that connected doctors with patients in real time for consultations, even for minor issues? It seemed simple enough, but I could see the potential to reduce wait times, lower costs, and make healthcare more accessible to people who couldn't afford to visit a doctor in person. The problem was, I had zero business experience, and the tech world was intimidating. I didn't know how to raise funds, how to find developers, or even how to build a proper business plan. But something inside me told me that if I didn't take a leap of faith now, I'd never forgive myself. So, after finishing my sophomore year, I made the toughest decision of my life. I dropped out of college. I'll admit, it wasn't an easy decision. I had a lot of doubts, a lot of people telling me I was crazy. But deep down, I knew I had to go all in on this idea. I wasn't just throwing away my medical career. I was pivoting, shifting from wanting to help people in a hospital to wanting to help people through technology. It felt like the right move. The first few months were tough. I had no idea how to build a platform from scratch, so I reached out to a few freelance developers online and offered to pay them with the little savings I had. They agreed, and we started working on a basic version of the app. But as the project progressed, I realized that I needed more than just a few freelance coders. I needed a team, a network of people who could help me build something meaningful. I started attending tech meetups, reaching out to anyone who could point me in the right direction. Slowly, I began assembling a team of like-minded individuals. A couple of developers, a marketing guru, and a business strategist joined the project. With each new person, the vision grew stronger. But that's when the real challenge hit: funding. I had no business experience, and no one was willing to give me a chance at first. I pitched to venture capitalists, angel investors, anyone I could think of, but all I got were rejections. The idea was solid, but I was a 20-year-old college dropout with no track record in business. People weren't willing to risk their money on someone like me. It was a dark period. I had poured every last penny I had into the project, and I wasn't getting anywhere. But I refused to give up. I kept refining the app, testing it with real users, and improving the platform as much as I could. I focused on getting feedback, making sure that what we were building truly solved a problem for people. Then, one day, things changed. One of the investors who had turned me down earlier emailed me. He said he had been following my progress, and although he wasn't ready to invest, he wanted to offer some advice. He introduced me to a couple of other investors who had an interest in health tech startups. I was hesitant at first, but I followed up, and this time, things clicked. The first investment wasn't huge, but it was enough to keep the lights on and help us scale the platform. From there, everything started to snowball. We improved the user experience, brought on more developers, and marketed the app aggressively. People began to take notice. Our platform grew, and soon, we were getting thousands of users every month. Fast forward 3 years, and the company is now one of the leading telemedicine platforms in the country. We've raised millions of dollars in funding, expanded to new markets, and partnered with major healthcare providers. What started as a simple idea to connect doctors with patients has now evolved into a full-scale platform that provides telehealth, remote monitoring, and even mental health services. Looking back, it still feels surreal. If you told me during my first hackathon that I would go on to build a successful startup, I would have laughed. But here I am, and every day still feels like a dream. I'm no longer focused on becoming a doctor in the traditional sense. Now, I'm focused on making healthcare more accessible and affordable to people everywhere. The most important lesson I've learned through this journey is that you don't always know what your path will look like. Sometimes, life takes you in unexpected directions. And when it does, you have to trust yourself, take risks, and be willing to pivot. Sometimes the greatest opportunities come from the most unexpected places, and all it takes is a little leap of faith to turn your dreams into reality. I used to be just another guy with a regular 9-to-5 job, struggling to make ends meet while dreaming of something bigger. It's funny how life works. You can be stuck in a rut for years, thinking nothing will change, until one moment shifts everything. I had always been entrepreneurial at heart, but I didn't know how to make that dream a reality. I grew up in a small town where opportunities were few, and the people around me were content with their jobs. The only thing anyone ever talked about was making sure you had a steady paycheck and a roof over your head. But deep down, I knew I was different. I wanted more than just a paycheck. I wanted to create something that would leave a mark, something that could potentially change my life and the lives of others. For years, I bounced from one job to another. I worked in retail, then as a barista, and eventually, I ended up in a corporate office. I was earning a decent salary, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant for something bigger. It was a comfortable life, but comfort was never my goal. The more I sat behind my desk, the more I realized that I wasn't happy. I hated the daily grind, the monotonous routine, and the lack of freedom. I spent my evenings brainstorming ideas for businesses, reading articles, and watching YouTube videos of successful entrepreneurs who started with nothing and built empires. Then, one fateful night, everything changed. I was scrolling through my phone, and I came across a video of a guy who had started a small e-commerce store selling custom t-shirts. It wasn't anything extraordinary, but his story resonated with me. He was just like me, someone who had no business experience, no investors, and no idea how things would turn out. But he took the plunge. He made mistakes, learned from them, and eventually turned his little side hustle into a six-figure business. That night, I made a decision. I was going to start my own business. I didn't have much to my name, just a bit of savings and a ton of enthusiasm. I wasn't sure what kind of business I wanted to start, but I knew it had to be something I was passionate about. I spent weeks brainstorming, doing research, and looking for that one perfect idea that would be my ticket to freedom. I tried everything from dropshipping to affiliate marketing, but nothing felt right. Then, one day, I stumbled upon a blog about creating and selling handmade candles. I'd always enjoyed making things with my hands, and candles seemed like a low-cost, creative business that anyone could start. I decided to give it a shot. I started by researching candle-making techniques and suppliers. I watched tutorials, read countless blog posts, and joined online forums where fellow candle makers shared their experiences. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of failures along the way. I burned through a few batches of candles that came out lumpy or didn't smell right. The first time I made a batch that actually looked decent, I felt like I had won the lottery. But my excitement quickly turned to doubt. Would anyone actually buy these? Was there even a market for homemade candles? I didn't have the luxury of a large budget, so I started small. I set up a simple website using Shopify, spent a couple of $100 on supplies, and began experimenting with different scents and designs. My first batch of candles was basic. There was nothing extraordinary about them, but they were mine. I poured my heart into every candle I made, taking my time to ensure they were as perfect as I could make them. Then came the marketing. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a large social media following, and I didn't know how to get the word out. I turned to Instagram, where I saw a lot of other small businesses gaining traction. I started posting pictures of my candles, sharing my process, and telling my story. Slowly but surely, people started noticing. I wasn't getting thousands of orders right away, but I was getting feedback. Some people told me they loved the candles, others gave me constructive criticism, and some even became repeat customers. I wasn't making a ton of money yet, but I was learning. I experimented with different scents, shapes, and designs, trying to find that sweet spot that would make my brand stand out. Slowly, things started to pick up. My Instagram following grew. I started running small ads, and word of mouth spread. Eventually, I received my first large order from a boutique in town that wanted to sell my candles. That was a turning point. I didn't just have a small online shop anymore. I was now working with a real retailer. The next few months were a whirlwind. I expanded my product line, added new scents, and even began creating custom candles for weddings and special events. As the business grew, so did my knowledge. I learned about SEO, social media marketing, influencer partnerships, and even email campaigns. I reinvested every penny I made back into the business, buying better supplies, upgrading my website, and improving my production process. I made my first six-figure year after about 3 years in business. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. There were moments when I wanted to quit, when I felt like it wasn't worth it. But looking back, I'm grateful for every setback, every challenge, and every late night spent working. Each mistake was a lesson, and each success was a step closer to the life I had dreamed about. Fast forward to today, and I've turned my small candle business into a full-fledged brand. I've expanded into new markets, I have a team of employees, and I'm able to do what I love every single day. My brand is now sold in dozens of boutiques, and I even have my own storefront in a local shopping area. But the best part? I no longer feel trapped in the cycle of a 9 to 5 job. I have the freedom to make my own schedule, to create products I believe in, and to help others do the same. Every day feels like a new adventure. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I'm proof that anyone, no matter where they start, can achieve their dreams if they're willing to work hard, make mistakes, and learn along the way. I'm living proof that with the right mindset and persistence, you can turn your passion into a thriving business. For anyone out there thinking of starting their own business, my advice is simple. Start small, don't be afraid of failure, and keep pushing forward. The journey will be hard, but it's also the most rewarding thing you'll ever do. I never thought I'd become an entrepreneur. Honestly, I always imagined myself working a standard 9 to 5 job, clocking in, doing my work, and heading home. But life, as it often does, had other plans for me. It all started when I was 24. I had just graduated from college with a degree in marketing, and I was eager to start my career. My first job was at a small marketing firm that had a big reputation in the industry. I was excited, thinking that I had made it. The firm was fast-paced, competitive, and ambitious. It was everything I thought I wanted. But after 6 months, something felt off. The work was interesting, but I started to feel trapped in the routine. Every day felt the same, and no matter how hard I worked, I could see the same faces around the office year after year. There was no room for growth, and I realized that, despite how successful the firm was, I wasn't building anything for myself. It wasn't a particular event that made me want to leave. It was more of a feeling, a creeping sense that I was going through the motions. The pressure of constant deadlines, the endless meetings, and the corporate politics began to wear me down. I was always told to think outside the box, but every time I did, it felt like I was met with resistance. The system was rigid, and any new ideas were quickly shot down if they weren't part of the traditional formula. I started to feel disconnected. There were people I worked with who seemed content with the status quo, but I couldn't shake the thought that I could be doing something more. I wanted to build something from the ground up. So, I started to think about starting my own business. At first, the idea felt like a pipe dream. I had no experience running a company, no investors, and no clear path. But I did have one thing, a passion for creativity and the desire to build something that could leave a lasting impact. I began working on side projects in my free time, designing logos, building simple websites for local businesses, and even consulting on social media strategies. Slowly, I started building a small client base. One thing that became very clear during this phase was that the market was full of opportunity, but it was also incredibly competitive. There were dozens of companies offering the same services, but none of them seemed to be focused on delivering a personalized, high-quality experience. I saw a gap that I thought I could fill, offering custom marketing strategies that were tailored to each individual business. It wasn't an easy transition, though. I had to make the difficult decision to quit my job and go all in. I didn't have much saved up, but I believed in the idea enough to take the risk. I still remember the day I handed in my resignation. My boss was surprised and tried to convince me to stay, offering me a raise and a promotion. But I had already made up my mind. I wanted to build something of my own. I started small, with a handful of clients, working from my tiny apartment. I didn't have an office, and my workspace consisted of a small desk in the corner of my bedroom. Every day, I hustled. I worked late into the night and early in the morning, constantly learning and adapting. I realized very quickly that the entrepreneurial journey was not going to be easy. There were days when I doubted myself, when I questioned if I was doing the right thing. But I kept pushing forward. One of the hardest parts was managing everything on my own. I was doing the marketing, the accounting, the client relations, and everything else. I had no one to help, and the workload was overwhelming. I remember one particularly stressful week when I had 3 major projects due at the same time. I was running on very little sleep and starting to feel burnt out. But that week was also a turning point. I managed to complete all the projects on time, exceeding my clients' expectations. It felt like a huge win, and I realized that I was capable of much more than I had given myself credit for. As my client base grew, I started to hire people. I brought on a graphic designer, a copywriter, and a social media manager. It was scary at first, being responsible for other people's livelihoods, but it was also incredibly rewarding. Slowly, my small business began to grow into something real. We started to gain a reputation for our high-quality, personalized marketing strategies, and more clients started coming in. I was finally seeing the results of all the hard work I had put in. But success didn't come without its challenges. In the early years, there were times when I had to make tough decisions. There were clients I had to let go, team members who didn't work out, and countless sleepless nights spent worrying about cash flow. There were also moments when I felt completely overwhelmed, like the pressure was too much to bear. But each time I faced a setback, I reminded myself of why I started in the first place, to build something I could be proud of. And that kept me going. Fast forward to today, and things have changed dramatically. My company is now a full-fledged marketing agency with a team of 20 talented individuals. We work with a wide range of clients, from small startups to well-known brands. I no longer work from my tiny apartment, and the business is no longer just a side hustle. It's a thriving company that's had a real impact on the industry. But even now, there are days when I feel like I'm still just getting started. Looking back on my journey, there are a few things I wish I had known from the beginning. First, being an entrepreneur is a marathon, not a sprint. There were times when I wanted instant success, but I quickly learned that it takes time to build something meaningful. Second, there's no such thing as a perfect plan. You have to be willing to pivot and adapt as you go. The world of business is constantly changing, and you have to be flexible enough to keep up. Lastly, never underestimate the value of your team. I may have started alone, but without the incredible people who've joined me along the way, my company would never be where it is today. As an entrepreneur, I've learned that the journey is filled with ups and downs, but it's the challenges that make the successes so much sweeter. I'm proud of what I've built, but I'm even more excited about what the future holds. The road ahead is uncertain, but that's what makes it all the more exciting. I'm still living the dream, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I started my business journey at a point in my life where I had no idea what I was doing. I had just graduated from college with a degree in marketing, and the economy was in a bit of a slump. Job opportunities were scarce, and the ones I did find seemed to pay less than what I could make at a fast food job. I had student loans to worry about, and the pressure was building. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was destined for more than just a cubicle job with a paycheck that barely covered rent. One night, as I sat on my couch scrolling through social media, I saw a post that changed my life. It was a friend of mine from college, someone I had always admired for his business acumen, talking about how he had just launched his own clothing line. The brand had blown up in a few months. Seeing his success sparked something in me. I thought, if he can do it, why can't I? I didn't have much money saved up, maybe a couple of $1,000s, but I knew I could scrape together enough to start something. But what? I had no idea about fashion and certainly no connections in the industry. That was when I realized I didn't need to reinvent the wheel. I just needed to find a product I could improve or make accessible to a larger audience. After a few weeks of brainstorming and researching trends, I landed on something I thought was simple but could be incredibly impactful: personalized phone cases. It seemed like an oversaturated market, but I saw an opportunity to create high-quality, custom-designed cases with a level of craftsmanship that could stand out. I had an eye for design, and I knew a bit about online marketing, so I figured this could be my entry point. The next few months were a blur. I spent most of my savings on a website, materials for prototypes, and a basic setup to start creating the cases. I remember late nights learning how to use design software, experimenting with different designs, and trying to figure out how to make my website look professional without breaking the bank. I used YouTube videos and free online tutorials to get the basics of e-commerce, but it was overwhelming. I remember feeling paralyzed by how much there was to do and how little I knew. But I was determined. After a few months, I launched the website, and the first few weeks were underwhelming, to say the least. I made a handful of sales, but not enough to justify the time and money I'd invested. I had the product, but I was terrible at marketing it. My social media accounts had a small following, but it was mostly friends and family who weren't really interested in buying. I knew I had to do something to change this. One night, I decided to take a risk. I reached out to an influencer with a fairly large following in the tech community who was known for reviewing phone accessories. I didn't know her personally, but I figured I had nothing to lose. I sent her a direct message, explaining who I was, what my brand was about, and offered to send her a custom-designed phone case. Surprisingly, she responded and agreed to check it out. She posted a picture of the case on her Instagram, and it was like a switch flipped. Orders started flooding in, and the excitement was contagious. People loved the idea of personalized phone cases, and the influencer's endorsement gave my brand a level of credibility that I couldn't have achieved on my own. I didn't have a huge budget for influencer marketing, but this was a start. The sales grew, and I began reinvesting every penny back into the business. As the sales grew, I realized I needed help. I couldn't do everything on my own, especially as I was still working part-time jobs to make ends meet. I hired a freelancer to help with social media management and a part-time assistant to help with customer service. Slowly but surely, things started to scale. My designs began improving, the brand image became more polished, and the customer experience started to shine. Within a year, my business had grown enough that I could quit my part-time jobs and focus entirely on my phone case brand. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of sleepless nights, but the feeling of being in control of my own destiny was worth every challenge. I eventually expanded the product line to include other phone accessories like chargers, pop sockets, and wireless headphones, all with the same custom touch that made the brand unique. Fast forward to today, and my brand is now one of the top players in the phone accessories market. I've partnered with several larger influencers and brands, and my products are featured in major tech retailers. I even opened my own office and warehouse, with a small team of full-time employees who help with everything from design to logistics. But the journey hasn't been all smooth sailing. There have been plenty of obstacles along the way. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that not every product or idea will work, no matter how great you think it is. I've had to pivot several times, killing off certain product lines that weren't resonating with customers. There were months where I thought I was on the brink of failure, and I considered giving up. But every time I wanted to quit, I reminded myself why I started in the first place, to create something of my own and to build something that could make a real impact. I've also learned the importance of building relationships with customers. In the beginning, I was so focused on making sales that I neglected the value of customer service. As I grew, I realized that customer loyalty was just as important as acquiring new customers. Listening to feedback, resolving complaints quickly, and offering a great user experience has helped my business grow exponentially. Today, I get emails from customers telling me how much they love the product, and it never gets old. That's what keeps me motivated. At this point, I can't help but look back and think about how far I've come from that uncertain graduate sitting on the couch with no direction. Starting a business wasn't easy, but every failure, every late night, and every risk I took has been worth it. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that success doesn't happen overnight, but with persistence, creativity, and a willingness to take risks, it's possible to build something great. It's not about how many times you fail, but how many times you pick yourself up and keep going. I was 22 years old when I decided to start my first business. At that age, I had no real idea what I was doing. I was fresh out of college with a degree in business management that I barely used. Most of my friends were starting their careers at big corporations or trying to figure out how to climb the corporate ladder, but I was a bit different. I had this burning desire to do something for myself. I wanted to create something that was mine, something I could pour my energy into, something I could be proud of. Little did I know, my dream would take me on a journey full of hard lessons, failures, moments of doubt, and eventual success. The first business idea I had came about when I was living in a small apartment in the city. It all started with a simple frustration. I hated the process of ordering food delivery. I was living in a busy area, and the local delivery options were limited. More than that, the delivery apps were clunky, and the service was inconsistent. Sometimes the food would arrive cold, or it would take forever. It felt like a perfect business opportunity, a better, more reliable food delivery service. So, I set to work. I didn't have much capital at the time, so I relied on personal savings, family support, and a few loans to get started. I did everything myself in the beginning, designing the website, talking to local restaurants, setting up delivery partnerships, and trying to come up with a unique value proposition. My plan was simple: provide faster, more reliable delivery, and offer a more user-friendly app experience. I knew I needed a way to stand out in a saturated market, but there were hurdles right from the start. First, I learned how difficult it was to get local restaurants to partner with a new delivery service. They were already tied to established platforms like Uber Eats and DoorDash, and they didn't want to take a chance on an unproven startup. I spent countless hours trying to convince restaurant owners that I could offer a better deal, but many of them didn't believe it. I even offered free trials and marketing support, but the response was underwhelming. Undeterred, I decided to try a different approach. Instead of targeting the big players, I focused on small, local restaurants that didn't yet have a delivery service. I started by approaching a handful of small businesses that didn't have a delivery presence at all and offered them a chance to get their food to customers without the overhead of running their own delivery system. Slowly but surely, I began to build up a small group of restaurant partners. Still, the app was only half the story. Building a user-friendly app that people would want to use was no small feat either. I didn't know how to code, so I hired a freelance developer to help build the platform. The problem was that the developer was slow and uncommunicative, and progress was painfully slow. Weeks would go by without any updates, and I felt like I was constantly chasing him to finish his work. But I couldn't afford to hire anyone else, so I stuck with it. While waiting for the app to come together, I started using social media to build buzz around my idea. I posted about the frustrations I had with food delivery apps, shared behind-the-scenes photos of the development process, and offered sneak peeks of the upcoming service. To my surprise, people started to engage. A small but dedicated following started to form, and I started to feel like I might be onto something. As the app was finally starting to come together, I was hit with another roadblock: funding. My initial budget was running out fast, and I didn't have the cash to continue running the business. I was barely scraping by, and there were times when I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep going. But I wasn't ready to quit. I decided to take the plunge and approach potential investors. I created a pitch deck and started reaching out to local angel investors and venture capitalists. The rejection emails came fast and often, but I kept pushing. Each rejection was a lesson in itself. Eventually, one investor took an interest in my business. He saw the potential and agreed to fund my startup in exchange for equity. With the new funding, I was able to hire more staff, improve the app, and expand the delivery area. We also started building partnerships with even more restaurants. Slowly but surely, the company started to grow. I went from working in my apartment to renting a small office space. We hired a few employees, including a better app developer who could finally bring the product to life in the way I had imagined. It wasn't easy, but I was finally starting to see results. The breakthrough came when we launched our marketing campaign. We focused on the one thing that set us apart: our faster delivery times. I ran ads on social media, handed out flyers in local neighborhoods, and started offering incentives for customers to use our service. We began to see an increase in sign-ups and orders, and slowly the app became more popular. There were still plenty of setbacks along the way. We had issues with delivery drivers, customers who were unhappy with their orders, and occasional crashes with the app. But we worked through each problem, learned from our mistakes, and kept pushing forward. The key was staying adaptable. Every time we hit a snag, we learned how to fix it and improve the experience. 2 years into the business, I started to realize that we were no longer a small startup. Our service was now one of the more popular food delivery platforms in the city. We had expanded to neighboring areas, and even some big restaurants were starting to partner with us. The company was profitable, and I was finally able to take a step back and breathe. The countless sleepless nights, the missed family events, and the stress were finally paying off. Today, my company is a multi-million-dollar business. We've grown to a point where we've hired a full team, expanded to multiple cities, and have created a brand that people trust. I'm still involved in every aspect of the business, but I've learned how to delegate and manage a team effectively. The key to my success, I've realized, isn't just about having a good idea. It's about persistence, resilience, and the willingness to learn from your failures. Looking back, I could never have imagined how far I'd come from that small apartment with just an idea and a lot of determination. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I thought about quitting, but now I see that those moments were just part of the journey. I built something from the ground up, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished. If you're out there wondering whether it's worth it, whether you can do it, just keep going. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. A few years ago, I was just another college dropout trying to figure out life. I had always been the kind of person who wasn't satisfied with the regular 9 to 5 routine, but I didn't have the courage to take the leap into entrepreneurship either. That all changed one day when I stumbled upon a problem that seemed to be so simple that no one had bothered to fix it yet. Little did I know, that problem would change my life forever. I was sitting at my favorite coffee shop one afternoon, scrolling through Reddit, which, by the way, is where a lot of my ideas were born, when I overheard a conversation between 2 people at the next table. They were discussing a business they were trying to start, but their biggest issue was how difficult it was to find reliable and affordable packaging suppliers for their products. I don't know why, but something clicked for me right then and there. I knew this was a problem I could solve. I had never been involved in any kind of business or packaging industry before, but I figured I could learn. So, I started researching suppliers, manufacturers, and distributors, spending hours each day reading articles and forums, watching YouTube videos, and reaching out to people in the industry. It felt like I was building a foundation from scratch, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing something that mattered. The first hurdle came when I tried to find suppliers willing to work with someone who was brand new to the game. I called dozens of companies, most of them dismissing me outright or offering prices that were way above what I could afford. But one day, I managed to get in touch with a small packaging company that was open to taking a chance on me. They were willing to offer me a decent price, and I was able to order my first batch of custom packaging at a relatively low cost. Now, I had to figure out how to get my product out there. I had a handful of contacts in the e-commerce space, but most of them had their own suppliers or weren't interested in partnering with a newcomer. It was a struggle, but I kept pushing forward. I knew I had a good product, and if I could just get it into the hands of the right people, it would sell itself. I began offering packaging solutions to small businesses I found online. At first, I was met with skepticism, but I was persistent. I made sample kits, crafted personalized proposals, and offered competitive prices. Slowly, things started to pick up. One of the best moments came when I managed to land my first major client, a small cosmetics company. They had been using low-quality packaging for years, and after seeing my samples, they agreed to place an order. This was my first big break. I was ecstatic. I poured all my energy into fulfilling that order and delivering it on time, ensuring the quality was perfect. The client was so happy with the packaging that they recommended me to a few of their business friends, and suddenly, I had a small but growing client base. But of course, success didn't come easily. There were plenty of setbacks along the way. One of the biggest was when I received a large shipment of packaging materials that were not up to standard. I had to return them, but the cost of doing so was steep, and I almost went bankrupt in the process. There were sleepless nights, constant stress, and moments when I doubted myself. But each time I encountered a setback, I learned from it and pushed forward. The most important lesson I learned during those early days was to never give up, no matter how hard things seemed. As the business started growing, I had to hire people. The first person I hired was a logistics manager, someone who could handle the influx of orders and ensure that everything was shipped on time. After that, I hired a marketing expert to help get the word out about my business. We began to focus on social media, creating Instagram and Facebook ads that targeted small businesses looking for affordable packaging. I knew that building a brand would be essential, so I started investing in design, making sure our website and product packaging looked sleek and professional. But no matter how much I learned or how many people I hired, the pressure never let up. Each day felt like a race against time. There were always new challenges, whether it was supplier delays, miscommunications with clients, or marketing campaigns that didn't perform as expected. I found myself working 12 to 16 hours a day, sometimes 7 days a week. I barely had time for anything else. There were weeks when I didn't even get to see my friends, and I started feeling like my entire life revolved around my business. The breakthrough came when we made our first six-figure sale. It was a huge online retailer who had heard about my packaging company through word of mouth. They wanted to order in bulk, which would have been impossible for me just a few months ago. But I had worked hard to get to that point, and now I had the resources and the team to handle a large-scale order. The payment alone was enough to keep the business afloat for months and allowed me to reinvest in growth. From there, the business only continued to scale. I began hiring more people, building relationships with new suppliers, and refining our product offering. We added more sustainable options, improved our customer service, and began offering design services to our clients. The positive reviews started pouring in, and before I knew it, we were in talks with several large retailers who were interested in collaborating with us. Today, my packaging company is a thriving business. We have clients all over the world, and we've built a brand that's synonymous with quality, reliability, and customer service. It still feels surreal sometimes, and I often think back to that coffee shop conversation that sparked it all. I went from being a broke college dropout with no direction to owning a successful business that employs dozens of people. It hasn't been easy, and there have been countless moments where I felt like giving up, but the key to my success was perseverance and the willingness to keep going when things seemed impossible. I still spend a lot of time working, but now, I'm able to balance it with personal time and reflection. I'm grateful for how far I've come and for the team that's helped me get here. Building this business has been the hardest, most rewarding thing I've ever done, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: success doesn't come overnight, but if you're persistent, focused, and willing to learn from your mistakes, you can achieve your goals, no matter where you start. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. It all started about 3 years ago when I was sitting in my cramped apartment, scrolling through Reddit on a Saturday night, like I did most weekends. I had a decent job as a data analyst, which I hated. My life felt like a never-ending loop of 9 to 5, followed by a quick dinner, some Netflix, and then back to bed to do it all over again the next day. I wanted more. I wanted to escape the corporate grind. I just didn't know how to get started. One evening, while I was scrolling through a post on the Side Hustles subreddit, I stumbled upon a comment that caught my eye. It was from a guy who had turned a small hobby into a six-figure business. He started selling custom t-shirts online, and now he was living the dream, working from home, traveling when he wanted, and spending time doing things he loved. I was intrigued. But more than that, I felt a spark of hope. I spent the next few weeks obsessing over the idea of starting my own online business. At first, I considered selling products related to my own hobbies: tech gadgets, video games, even custom phone cases. But nothing really felt right. I wanted to do something different, something that would stand out. One evening, while on a walk, I had an idea. What if I sold something that was both personal and meaningful? I could create a brand around personalized gifts. After all, everyone loves receiving something custom-made that shows thought and care. I could start with custom mugs, t-shirts, and posters, things that people could give as gifts for birthdays, anniversaries, or holidays. I immediately started researching the market. I spent hours reading articles, watching YouTube videos, and browsing online stores to see what was already out there. I quickly realized that while there were plenty of companies offering personalized products, the market was saturated. But what I noticed was that most of the sellers were using low-quality designs, poor printing methods, and the shipping times were atrocious. I knew I could do better. I spent the next 2 months learning everything I could about print-on-demand services, which would allow me to sell custom products without the need to hold inventory or manage shipping. I knew it would be a lot of work, but it felt like the perfect way to get started without a huge upfront investment. In the meantime, I saved up about $3,000 from my day job to fund the project. I hired a freelance graphic designer to help me with logo and product designs, as I knew I lacked the skills to create something professional looking. I also set up an online store using Shopify. It was honestly a lot of trial and error, but it was exciting. The whole process felt like a creative outlet that I hadn't realized I needed. The first few months were slow. I didn't make a single sale in the first 2 weeks. But I wasn't discouraged. I had read enough stories online to know that starting a business takes time. I spend hours every day on social media, trying to build an audience. I shared posts on Instagram and Facebook, showing off the products, doing giveaways, and sharing behind-the-scenes content about how everything was made. It was exhausting, but I was determined. I didn't expect the breakthrough to happen the way it did. One day, I decided to reach out to a popular YouTuber who often reviewed unique gifts. I sent them an email explaining my business and offering to send them a free custom mug in exchange for a shout-out. To my surprise, they responded within hours. They agreed to the collaboration, and within a week, the video was live. The response was overwhelming. I received hundreds of orders in the span of just a few days. My website crashed twice because I wasn't prepared for the traffic. It felt surreal. Here I was, a guy who had been stuck in a dead-end job just a few months ago, now running a small but successful business. But success didn't come without its challenges. As the orders started pouring in, I realized how much I still had to learn. The print-on-demand service I was using was slow to fulfill orders, and a few customers started complaining about delayed shipments. I had to quickly find a better fulfillment partner, which took another month of research and testing. On top of that, managing the influx of orders while still working my full-time job was exhausting. I spent every free moment working on my business, even if it meant losing sleep. I would come home from the office, make dinner, and then work until 2 a.m. on my side hustle. My friends and family started noticing that I was disappearing more often, but I knew it was temporary. I had to push through if I wanted to make this work. By the 6-month mark, I had made enough money to quit my job. It wasn't easy to walk away from the stability of a full-time paycheck, but I had reached a point where the side hustle was generating enough income to sustain me. I was scared, but I also knew that I had created something that had the potential to grow. For the next year, I focused entirely on my business. I expanded my product line, hired a few part-time employees to help with customer service, and started working on building a brand. I invested in ads, improved my website, and collaborated with more influencers. Sales grew steadily, but I was still living on a tight budget, trying to reinvest every penny into the business. Then came the second breakthrough. I managed to land a deal with a large retailer who wanted to feature my products in their stores. This partnership nearly tripled my revenue in just a few months. I couldn't believe it. I was now not just running an online store, but also getting my products into physical retail locations. But even with the success, there were still challenges. Managing inventory, keeping up with demand, handling customer complaints, and managing a growing team took a toll on me. I had to learn how to delegate and trust my team to handle the day-to-day operations. I also had to learn to manage my time better so I wasn't burning out. 3 years later, I look back at the journey with a sense of pride and gratitude. My business is now a multi-million-dollar company, and I've been able to live a life that I once thought was impossible. I'm not working 100-hour weeks anymore, and I've been able to hire an amazing team that helps me run the business. I've even started mentoring others who want to start their own entrepreneurial journey. If you had told me 3 years ago that I'd be where I am now, I would have laughed. But the truth is, the hardest part wasn't coming up with the idea, building the website, or managing the logistics. The hardest part was taking that first step, pushing through the initial struggles, and refusing to give up. That's what made all the difference. I was 25, fresh out of college, with dreams that were bigger than my bank account and a pile of student debt that seemed to grow by the day. My friends and I all had our own ideas about what life after graduation was going to look like, but none of us had a concrete plan. Most of them went into traditional office jobs, but I couldn't shake this feeling that there was more to life than sitting behind a desk for 40-plus hours a week. I was always drawn to the idea of entrepreneurship, even though I had no idea where to start. One evening, after my third unsuccessful job interview, I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, mindlessly scrolling through social media. It was around then that I came across a post from an acquaintance I'd barely spoken to since high school. She had started a small online store selling handmade jewelry and was sharing her journey. She wasn't making millions or anything, but she was living on her own terms, running a business she loved. That was the spark. I thought, if she can do it, so can I. At that point, I had nothing to lose. I had a little savings, but it was barely enough to cover rent for a few months. I wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to sell, but I knew I was good with computers and loved working with technology. After a few sleepless nights of brainstorming, I decided to create a digital marketing agency. It wasn't the most original idea, but I saw a gap in the market. Small businesses were struggling to get the word out, especially on social media, and many didn't know where to start. I figured I could offer affordable, tailored solutions to help them grow. I started by reaching out to every local business I could find, offering free consultations. I didn't have a website or even a portfolio, but I had a good pitch. A couple of businesses agreed to let me help them for free in exchange for testimonials. I poured every ounce of my energy into those first few clients, and slowly but surely, they began to see results. Within 3 months, I had my first paid client. It wasn't much, just $500 for a basic social media campaign, but it was a start. Things began to snowball after that. With each new client, I gained more confidence and credibility. I started working 16-hour days, learning everything I could about digital marketing, design, SEO, and content strategy. I didn't have a team, but I was willing to do anything to make my business work. My friends thought I was crazy. They couldn't understand why I wasn't just taking a stable job with benefits. But I didn't care. I was in it for the long haul. The turning point came a year later when I landed a contract with a mid-sized e-commerce brand. It was a huge deal for me. It meant I could finally hire my first employee. I brought on a graphic designer I had met online and a content writer from a freelance platform. The three of us worked day and night, constantly refining our services and improving our strategies. That's when I realized that the business wasn't just mine anymore, it was ours. The stress was still there, but it was easier to handle knowing I had a solid team behind me. Over the next few years, the agency grew. We expanded our services to include website development, paid advertising, and email marketing. I learned the hard way that scaling a business was much harder than starting it. There were countless sleepless nights, client meetings that didn't go well, and mistakes that cost us money. But with each challenge, we grew stronger. I spent a lot of time reading books, attending conferences, and networking with other entrepreneurs. I was determined to keep pushing forward. It wasn't until the 5th year of running my business that I felt like we really hit our stride. By then, we had a full team of 20 employees, and we were working with some well-known brands. I had learned to delegate, which was a huge step. For so long, I tried to do everything myself, but that's not sustainable. I had to let go of the idea of being in control of every single detail. I had to trust my team and empower them to make decisions. That shift in mindset was a game changer. But with success came new challenges. Managing a larger team, handling bigger clients, and keeping up with industry changes made me realize that entrepreneurship isn't just about building something. It's about maintaining it and ensuring it doesn't crumble under pressure. The stress was relentless at times, and there were moments when I thought about quitting. But every time I felt like giving up, I would remind myself why I started: the freedom, the challenge, and the ability to create something meaningful. One of the biggest lessons I've learned along the way is that failure is inevitable. There will be setbacks. There will be times when you feel like everything is falling apart. But those moments are where the real growth happens. I've had clients leave us, projects that went south, and times when cash flow was tight. But each of those experiences taught me something valuable. I learned how to pivot, how to negotiate, how to lead a team, and how to take risks without being reckless. Today, I'm in a much different place than I was when I first started. I no longer worry about making rent, and I've been able to reinvest in the business and diversify into new ventures. My agency is profitable, but it's not about the money anymore. It's about creating a legacy, helping other entrepreneurs grow, and constantly learning. I'm still very much involved in the business, but I've learned to take a step back and enjoy the ride. The journey hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. If there's one thing I want other aspiring entrepreneurs to know, it's this: success doesn't happen overnight. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You'll face challenges that seem insurmountable, but as long as you keep pushing forward, you'll come out stronger on the other side. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I wouldn't change a thing. The failures taught me more than the successes ever could. As I sit here reflecting on everything I've accomplished, I can't help but think back to that moment when I took the leap. I was broke, uncertain, and scared out of my mind. But I believed in myself, and I believed in my vision. And now, I'm living proof that you can turn your dreams into reality, even if the road ahead seems impossible. I'm not done yet. There's still so much to learn, so many people to help, and so many challenges to overcome. But I'm excited for the future. I've built something I'm proud of, and I can't wait to see where it takes me. I've always been a firm believer in the idea that entrepreneurship is about persistence, learning from failure, and having the courage to try something new, even when the odds are stacked against you. My journey wasn't smooth, but it taught me lessons that no business school could ever teach. It all started about 6 years ago when I was stuck in a job I hated. I had a decent salary, a 9-to-5 routine, and a cubicle that I thought would define my life forever. But deep down, I always had this nagging feeling that I wasn't doing what I was meant to do. There was a sense of untapped potential within me, like there was a greater purpose out there that I wasn't fulfilling. I wanted to build something of my own. But here's the catch. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew that I didn't want to be stuck in the corporate world forever. I started reading books, listening to podcasts, and attending seminars. That's when I stumbled across an online business course that promised to teach people how to make money through e-commerce. It sounded too good to be true, but I thought, why not? It was time to take action. I spent every waking moment after work researching, learning, and setting up my first online store. At the time, I had no technical knowledge and little to no understanding of the e-commerce world. I chose a niche that I thought would be profitable: custom phone accessories. The idea was simple: cell phone cases with cool, personalized designs. I invested a small amount of money into creating a website, and I started uploading images of the phone cases I'd designed. I spent hours working on Facebook ads, hoping to drive traffic to my site. At first, nothing happened. I made 0 sales. It was crushing. I couldn't understand why my ads weren't working. I'd followed all the strategies I had learned in the course, but the results just weren't there. Weeks went by, and I was about to give up. The bills were piling up, and I was still working my 9-to-5. But something inside me refused to let go of this idea. I'd invested time, money, and energy into this, and I couldn't let it fail without giving it my all. That's when I decided to take a different approach. I stopped focusing on what I thought would work and started listening to my customers. I reached out to anyone who had visited my website, asking them for feedback. Why didn't they buy? What could I improve? The responses I received were eye-opening. People loved the designs, but didn't like the quality of the cases. Some of them mentioned that the cases didn't fit their phones well, while others said they were too flimsy. That was my wake-up call. I wasn't selling a great product. So, I decided to change things up. I found a new supplier and focused on creating higher quality cases. I also revamped the website, making it more user-friendly and visually appealing. I continued with the ads, but this time, I fine-tuned them based on the feedback I had gathered. Slowly but surely, the sales started coming in. At first, it was just 1 or 2 cases a day. But as I refined my marketing strategy and improved the product, the numbers grew. It wasn't an overnight success, but it was progress. I started getting more and more customers, and word of mouth helped. 6 months later, I decided to quit my day job. It was a terrifying decision. The security of a steady paycheck was hard to let go of, but I had reached a point where my business was earning more than my job ever could. I took the leap of faith and never looked back. Things didn't always go smoothly, though. As my business grew, so did the challenges. I had to hire a team to handle customer service, manage the supply chain, and fulfill orders. There were days when it felt like I was constantly putting out fires. There were late-night phone calls with suppliers, customer complaints about delayed shipments, and issues with product quality. But I learned to adapt, solve problems quickly, and hire the right people to help me. The biggest lesson I learned from this phase was the importance of building a strong team. I couldn't do it alone anymore. I hired people who were smarter and more skilled than I was in certain areas. I found a talented web designer who helped me improve the user experience on my site. I hired a marketing specialist who understood the latest trends in digital advertising. And most importantly, I hired people who were as passionate about the business as I was. 2 years into running the business full-time, I decided to scale. I took the bold step of expanding the product line. I went from just phone cases to offering custom laptop bags, tablet cases, and even tech accessories. It was a risk, but it paid off. The new products were a hit, and my customer base grew even larger. But with growth came more challenges. The market was becoming saturated, and competition was fierce. I realized that to stay ahead, I needed to innovate and create something truly unique. That's when I decided to invest in a custom design tool that would allow customers to create their own personalized phone cases directly on my website. It was a game changer. The launch of the design tool was a massive success. People loved the ability to create their own products, and the sales skyrocketed. It was the turning point I had been waiting for. The business continued to grow, and within 3 years, I was able to expand internationally. Now, here's the part of the story where most people expect me to say that I became a millionaire overnight. That's not how it went. There were still plenty of bumps along the way. But I had built something sustainable, something that had real value. I was no longer just a guy with an idea. I was a business owner who had created a brand that people trusted. Fast forward to today, and I run a successful e-commerce business that generates millions in revenue annually. We have a dedicated team, a loyal customer base, and a growing international presence. My company has even been featured in major publications. But the journey wasn't easy. The one thing I've learned through all of this is that success is not about avoiding failure. It's about learning from it and never giving up. Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster of highs and lows, but it's the lows that teach you the most. I'm proud of what I've built, but I know that without the failures, setbacks, and tough decisions, I wouldn't be where I am today. If you're thinking about starting a business, I have one piece of advice. Just start. You're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. But you're also going to learn, adapt, and grow. The only thing that will stop you is if you quit. So keep going, even when things seem impossible, because you never know how close you are to the breakthrough that will change everything. It all started about 5 years ago when I was working a 9-to-5 job that I absolutely hated. I was stuck in a cubicle, grinding away for a company that didn't appreciate me. The work wasn't challenging, the pay wasn't great, and the culture was toxic. But the worst part? I was stuck. I knew I was capable of so much more, but I had no idea how to get out of the corporate grind. Every morning, I'd wake up with a feeling of dread. I'd go through the motions, drink my coffee, get dressed, and show up at work with a fake smile plastered on my face. My boss, a micromanaging nightmare, would constantly hover over me, making every little task feel like a burden. The days dragged on, and I felt like I was losing pieces of myself. I spent hours daydreaming about doing something different, something that would give me the freedom to be my own boss, set my own schedule, and, most importantly, find fulfillment. But there was a problem. I had no idea what to do. Then one fateful evening, after another soul-crushing day at work, I came across a YouTube video about starting a business. The guy in the video was someone who had gone from broke to millionaire in just a few years. He talked about building a business from the ground up, about finding your passion, and most importantly, about the mindset shift it takes to succeed. Something in that video clicked with me. I realized that the key to getting out of my rut wasn't just finding another job, it was creating something of my own. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with ideas. I thought about all the things I loved: tech, gadgets, and innovation. What if I could build something that combined my passion for technology with my desire for freedom? After hours of brainstorming, I had an epiphany. I decided I would create a platform that helped small businesses get the most out of technology. Many small business owners didn't understand how to use tech to their advantage, and I saw an opportunity to bridge that gap. I knew I wasn't ready to quit my job yet. I had bills to pay, after all, but I was determined to start working on my business in my spare time. So, every night after work, I started researching. I read books on entrepreneurship, watched videos, and learned everything I could about building a website and running a business. I spent hours teaching myself how to code and how to market a product. I figured out how to create a simple yet professional website and began reaching out to small businesses to gauge their interest. The first few months were brutal. I would wake up early, go to work, come home, and work on my business until late at night. Weekends were spent cold emailing potential clients and attending local networking events. At first, no one replied. Then, one day, I got an email from a small retail shop asking if I could help them with their website. I was ecstatic. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I worked tirelessly on their site, offering them everything I could at a ridiculously low price, just to get my foot in the door. That first client turned into 2. Then, 2 turned into 5. Slowly, my business began to grow. But with growth came new challenges. I had to learn how to handle client communications, manage my time, and ensure that I could deliver quality work while juggling my full-time job. It was exhausting, but I pushed through because I could feel it. The dream was becoming real. Around the 6-month mark, I had saved up enough money to finally quit my day job. I was terrified, but I knew I had to take the leap. I was no longer just daydreaming about being my own boss. I was actually doing it. The first few months as a full-time entrepreneur were filled with ups and downs. I had to hustle harder than ever, taking on multiple projects at once just to keep the lights on. I made mistakes, tons of them. There were times when I felt like I had made the wrong decision, times when I questioned if I was cut out for this. But every setback was a lesson learned, and every success fueled me to keep going. What really helped me during this time was finding a mentor. A few months after going full-time, I met a seasoned entrepreneur who had been in the game for decades. He taught me everything I needed to know about scaling my business, about managing finances, and about taking calculated risks. His guidance was invaluable. By the end of my first year, my business had grown to the point where I was able to hire my first employee. I brought on a part-time developer to help with the technical side of things, and together, we worked on expanding the platform. We began offering more services and targeting larger clients. The growth was exponential, and it felt like everything was falling into place. However, the real turning point came when I made a bold decision to pivot my business model. After speaking with several clients, I realized that they didn't just want a website, they wanted a comprehensive digital marketing strategy that could help them grow their businesses online. So, I decided to shift my focus to offer full-service digital marketing solutions. It was a huge risk, but I believed in the potential. With this new direction, the business took off. We started landing bigger clients, and our revenue soared. By year 3, we had grown to a team of 10 employees, and we were working with clients all over the country. I finally felt like I had built something that mattered, something that gave me the freedom and satisfaction I had always craved. Now, 5 years later, my business is thriving. We've expanded into new markets, and I'm constantly looking for ways to innovate and grow. The challenges haven't gone away, they've only gotten bigger. But I've learned how to navigate them, how to delegate, and how to lead a team. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. I went from being a burnt-out employee, stuck in a cubicle, to running a successful business with a team of talented individuals who share my vision. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. If I could go back and give my younger self one piece of advice, it would be this: don't wait for the perfect moment. There will never be a perfect moment. You just have to take the leap, make mistakes, and learn as you go. The road to success isn't linear, but if you're passionate and persistent, you'll find your way. To anyone who's stuck in a job they hate, feeling like there's no way out, take this as your sign. It's possible to change your life, to create something of your own, and to find fulfillment. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I never thought a random decision in my early 20s would lead me to build a business that would not only change my life but the lives of others around me. If you're reading this and you feel stuck, just know that persistence and some crazy ideas can get you pretty far. It all started in my freshman year of college. I was studying business at a small university, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Most of my friends were focused on internships, resumes, and networking. They all had some clear path they were following, and honestly, I felt like I was behind. I wasn't interested in working a 9-to-5 job. I didn't want to sit in a cubicle all day. I wanted to create something that could stand the test of time. One day, in between classes, I saw an ad on Facebook about dropshipping. I'd heard about it before but never took it seriously. The ad was from a guy who claimed to have made millions by selling products online without ever touching the inventory. I was skeptical, but something about the idea stuck with me. That night, I did some research and found out that dropshipping was a legitimate business model. But there was a catch. It wasn't easy. I decided to give it a shot. I didn't have much money saved up, and my parents weren't exactly thrilled about the idea of me investing in something risky. But I had a few $100 from a part-time job, and I figured it was worth the gamble. I registered a domain, set up a Shopify store, and started looking for products to sell. I didn't know the first thing about marketing, branding, or what would sell well, but I was determined to figure it out. After hours of Googling, I found a product I thought could work: a unique phone case with customizable designs. It wasn't the most innovative product, but I thought it was cool and different from the standard cases you could find everywhere. I was excited. I uploaded some images, created a product page, and set up a basic marketing campaign using Facebook ads. I didn't know how to run ads, but I watched a few tutorials and clicked publish. Nothing happened. For the next few weeks, I spent hours tweaking the website, creating new ads, and experimenting with different products. I was getting a few visits, but no sales. It was frustrating, and every time I felt like I was getting close, I'd hit a dead end. The worst part was the constant anxiety. I felt like I was letting down my family and friends who had told me to stick with the plan and get a real job. I didn't even have a backup plan if this dropshipping thing didn't work out. It felt like I was putting all my eggs in one basket, and that basket was slowly sinking into a sea of missed opportunities and doubt. Then, one day, it all clicked. I realized that the problem wasn't with the product or the website, it was the way I was presenting it. People didn't care about a generic phone case with some random designs. They needed to see how it would enhance their lives. So, I rewrote my product descriptions, making them more personal. I showed how the product wasn't just a phone case, but a way to express their personality. I added lifestyle images, not just product shots, to show the cases in real-life situations. Next, I focused on building trust. I started adding customer testimonials, offering a money-back guarantee, and making my website look more professional. I also decided to narrow my target audience. Instead of trying to sell to everyone, I focused on people who loved customizing their personal items, especially in the tech space. I started targeting people who followed tech influencers and niche YouTube channels. I was learning about Facebook ads, running A/B tests, and analyzing data to find out what worked best. It didn't happen overnight, but after a few weeks, I started to see a steady increase in sales. My first sale felt like a massive win. I couldn't believe that someone had actually bought something from my store. But the best part was that it wasn't just a one-time thing. My sales kept increasing. The more I learned about digital marketing and customer psychology, the better my store performed. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. One of the biggest mistakes was choosing the wrong supplier. A few months into the business, I received complaints from customers about delayed shipping and poor quality products. I had to scramble to find a new supplier, and the process took a lot longer than I expected. I also had to deal with chargebacks and returns, which ate into my profits. But I kept pushing forward. By the time I graduated, I had built a solid customer base, and my business was generating enough income for me to focus on it full-time. I didn't have to go to job interviews or follow the traditional path. The freedom was incredible. My parents still didn't fully understand it, but they could see that I was doing something I was passionate about. After graduation, I hired a small team to help with customer service and marketing. I took on more product lines and even started to design my own items. I shifted from just dropshipping to creating a brand. I wanted to build a company that people could trust, not just a random store selling random products. I focused on creating high-quality, unique items that couldn't be found anywhere else. I started working with influencers and running more advanced ad campaigns to reach even bigger audiences. As the business grew, I started to face new challenges. Scaling a business was hard. Hiring the right people, managing inventory, and maintaining a consistent brand image while growing quickly was overwhelming. I had to learn about leadership and decision-making on the fly. There were times when I felt like I had no idea what I was doing, but I kept moving forward, one step at a time. Today, my business is not just a store. It's a full-fledged brand with a loyal customer base and a team of talented people. We sell all kinds of products now, from custom phone cases to tech gadgets and lifestyle accessories. Our Instagram and TikTok pages have millions of followers, and we're constantly coming up with new ideas to innovate and improve. The most rewarding part of this journey isn't the money or the success. It's the fact that I created something that has impacted people's lives in a positive way. I've had customers tell me how our products have helped them express themselves or made their lives easier. That's the kind of impact I always wanted to have. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that success doesn't come from avoiding failure. It comes from learning from your mistakes, pivoting when necessary, and never giving up, even when things get tough. When I started, I didn't know if it would work. But here I am, years later, with a thriving business. If you're thinking of starting your own business, don't wait for the perfect time. There's no such thing. Just start, learn as you go, and keep pushing forward. Persistence is the key to making your dreams a reality. I had always been the kid with a lot of ideas, but not the best follow-through. Growing up in a small town, I was surrounded by people who worked 9 to 5 jobs and didn't really understand the concept of entrepreneurship. It wasn't that they weren't supportive, they just didn't get the idea of taking risks or building something from scratch. But I was determined to do something different. I wanted to prove that I could make it on my own, even if it meant stepping out of my comfort zone and making some pretty risky decisions along the way. My journey started in high school. I was always the kid who was obsessed with the latest gadgets. While my classmates were playing sports or hanging out, I was tinkering with old computers, taking them apart and putting them back together. I'd find cheap, broken-down electronics at yard sales and online auctions and fix them up to sell. At first, it was just a way to make extra cash. I wasn't really thinking about business. I just loved the challenge of fixing something that others thought was broken. By the time I graduated, I had saved up enough money from flipping old electronics to buy my first used car. It wasn't much, but it felt like a huge accomplishment. I used that car to start a small side hustle. I began driving for a local delivery service, picking up and dropping off items for people in my area. It was a simple gig, but it gave me a taste of what it was like to be my own boss, even if it was just on a small scale. During this time, I also started doing more research into the business world. I read books, listened to podcasts, and watched videos of entrepreneurs who had started from nothing. They were inspiring, but I still didn't know what kind of business I wanted to build. I just knew I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. That's when I stumbled across the idea of starting a digital marketing agency. It seemed like a natural fit for me since I already had experience with technology and a passion for problem solving. I had no real formal training in marketing, but I figured I could learn as I went. I began reaching out to small local businesses in my area, offering to help them improve their online presence. My pitch was simple. I'll help you get more customers through social media and search engine optimization, SEO. A lot of business owners were skeptical. They didn't really understand the power of the internet, and they certainly didn't see the value in paying someone like me to manage their online presence. But I didn't let that stop me. I started by offering my services for free or at a discounted rate to build up my portfolio. I didn't expect immediate success, but I knew that if I could prove my worth, I could eventually start charging what I was really worth. Slowly but surely, I started getting results for my clients. Their businesses began growing, and word started to spread. Before I knew it, I had more clients than I could handle. The problem was, I didn't know how to scale. I was still doing everything myself, managing clients, creating content, doing SEO, running ads, and I was burning out. I realized I needed help if I was going to take this business to the next level. So, I hired my first employee. It was a huge leap of faith. I wasn't sure if I could afford to pay someone full-time, but I knew that if I didn't delegate some of the work, I'd never be able to grow. Hiring my first employee was one of the best decisions I ever made. They took over some of the routine tasks, which freed up my time to focus on bigger picture strategy and client acquisition. As the business grew, I continued to hire more people. We expanded our services to include website design, content marketing, and paid advertising. My team and I worked tirelessly to improve our clients' results, and we saw tremendous success. However, the road wasn't always smooth. We hit plenty of bumps along the way. One of the hardest moments came during the first major economic downturn I faced. A large portion of our clients were small businesses, and when the economy took a hit, many of them couldn't afford our services anymore. We lost several clients in a matter of weeks, and I had to make some tough decisions. I considered cutting costs by downsizing the team, but I didn't want to let go of the people who had helped me get this far. Instead of making cuts, I made a bold move. I reached out to my remaining clients and offered to work out payment plans or reduced rates to help them through the tough times. I also doubled down on marketing and outreach, looking for new clients in industries that were less affected by the downturn. It was a tough period, but we made it through. The experience taught me the importance of adapting quickly and staying flexible in the face of adversity. One of the key lessons I learned during this time was the power of networking. Before, I had relied mostly on word-of-mouth referrals and organic growth, but I realized that to scale even further, I needed to be more proactive about building relationships. I began attending industry conferences, networking events, and reaching out to other entrepreneurs for advice and partnerships. That's when things really started to take off. My business became a trusted name in the digital marketing world, and clients were coming to us instead of us having to chase them. The success didn't come overnight, but looking back, I can pinpoint several key moments where things clicked into place. Hiring the right people, adapting during tough times, and building a network of like-minded entrepreneurs were all crucial to our growth. As we continued to scale, I realized that I had built something bigger than just a business. I had built a community of people who believed in what we were doing and were invested in our success. Fast forward to today, and my agency is thriving. We've expanded to multiple cities, and we have a team of 30 people who are all experts in their respective fields. I've learned so much along the way, not just about marketing and business, but also about leadership, resilience, and the power of persistence. There were many times when I wanted to quit, when things felt impossible, but I kept going because I knew that the only way to fail was to give up. Looking back at where I started, I can hardly believe how far we've come. From fixing old electronics in my garage to running a successful digital marketing agency, it's been a wild ride. But I wouldn't change a thing. Entrepreneurship has taught me more about myself than I ever could have imagined. And the best part is, the journey is far from over. I'll never forget the day I realized my life would change forever. It was a Wednesday morning, and I was sitting in my cramped office at a job I had grown to loathe. The walls were painted a dull gray, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the monotony of working in a cubicle was suffocating. But what made it worse was the feeling of being stuck in a never-ending cycle. I had been in that office for years, working for a small marketing agency that paid well enough but left me feeling unfulfilled. My journey to entrepreneurship started on a whim, driven by frustration and a desire for something more. The idea hit me like a bolt of lightning one morning after I had gotten off a particularly grueling conference call. I was tired of talking about brand strategies and demographics for companies I didn't care about. I wanted to do something that felt real, something that would change people's lives, even if just a little. That's when the idea for my first business was born. It wasn't much at first, just a vague idea that I jotted down in a notebook. I wanted to create a platform where small business owners could connect with digital marketers who actually cared about their brand. The marketing world was full of cookie-cutter solutions, and I knew from my experience at the agency that many small businesses felt overlooked. There was an entire underserved market, and I felt like I could build something for them. The decision to leave my job wasn't easy. I had a steady paycheck, benefits, and a career path that many would envy. But deep down, I knew that if I didn't take the leap now, I might spend the next 20 years regretting it. So, I made the decision to quit. I remember walking into my boss's office and handing in my resignation letter. I had never been so terrified in my life, but also so exhilarated. The fear of the unknown was overwhelming, but I pushed through it. I had no safety net. I had no backup plan. It was just me, my laptop, and my dreams. The first few months were a blur of late nights, early mornings, and constant self-doubt. I didn't have much capital to start with, so I bootstrapped the entire operation. I was living off savings and a few freelance gigs that kept me afloat. I remember spending hours trying to design the website, only to have it look like something from the early days of the internet. But I didn't care. I was learning as I went along, and every failure felt like a stepping stone. I decided to market my platform by reaching out to small business owners on LinkedIn and offering free consultations. It was a slow grind at first. Most people ignored me, some outright laughed at my idea, but a few were willing to give me a shot. I started working with local businesses, helping them improve their online presence. I didn't make much money in the beginning, but each client was a victory, and I began to see the potential in what I was building. One of the turning points came when I worked with a small bakery in my hometown. The owner was a passionate woman who had been running the bakery for decades but had no online presence to speak of. After working with her for a few weeks, I helped her revamp her website, set up social media pages, and create an email marketing campaign. Within a month, her business saw a 30% increase in sales. It wasn't a huge success in terms of numbers, but it was enough to validate the idea that small businesses really needed affordable and personalized marketing help. Word spread quickly, and soon, I had more clients than I could handle. I hired a few freelancers to help with the workload, and the business began to grow. But with growth came new challenges. I had to learn how to manage a team, handle client expectations, and navigate the complexities of running a business. There were moments when I thought I had made a huge mistake, but I always reminded myself that nothing worth having comes easy. By the end of my first year in business, I had grown my platform into a profitable enterprise with several employees. We had created a system that helped hundreds of small businesses improve their marketing strategies and boost their revenue. It wasn't a massive company, but it didn't need to be. What mattered most was that I had built something from the ground up that helped people and gave me the freedom to live life on my own terms. But just as I was starting to feel like I had figured it all out, disaster struck. One of our largest clients, a mid-sized e-commerce company, decided to pull out of our contract. They had grown faster than expected and brought their marketing in-house. It was a massive blow. The loss of revenue was significant, and for the first time, I found myself wondering if I could keep the business afloat. The pressure was unbearable. I spent sleepless nights thinking about what to do next. Rather than panic, I made the decision to pivot. I realized that if we could help businesses grow their online presence, we could also help them scale through digital products. I started working on a new division of the business focused on creating digital marketing courses and tools for entrepreneurs. The idea was simple. If small business owners couldn't afford a full-time marketing team, we could provide them with affordable resources to help them market themselves. It wasn't an easy transition, but it paid off. Our new digital product line took off, and within 6 months, we had created a steady stream of passive income that allowed us to reinvest in the business. The pivot not only saved the company but helped it grow in ways I had never imagined. 5 years after I took the leap and quit my job, I can honestly say that entrepreneurship has been the hardest thing I've ever done. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, sleepless nights, failures, and small victories. But every single moment has been worth it. I've built a business that I'm proud of, a team that I trust, and a life that I truly enjoy. The best part is that I'm no longer stuck in a cubicle, living for the weekends. I wake up every day excited to tackle new challenges and help others grow. I've learned more about myself than I ever could have working for someone else. And while I don't have all the answers, I know one thing for sure. I'll never stop chasing my dreams, no matter how difficult the path may be. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far I've come. But every single decision, every risk, and every mistake has led me to this point. Entrepreneurship isn't about having all the answers. It's about persistence, adaptability, and the willingness to keep going, even when the road ahead seems uncertain. And that's a lesson I carry with me every day as I continue on this journey. I remember the day I started my business like it was yesterday, even though it's been over 5 years now. I was just an average guy working a 9-to-5 job, stuck in a cycle of monotony that drained every ounce of passion I had. The job was fine. It paid the bills, but I felt like I was walking through life without any real direction. My dreams of entrepreneurship were always pushed to the back of my mind, drowned out by the everyday demands of adulting. I knew I wanted more, but I had no idea how to get there. It all started one afternoon when I stumbled across a post on Reddit about people turning their side hustles into full-time businesses. The more I read, the more I felt like I could do it too. I mean, if they could do it, why couldn't I? But there was one major problem. I had no money to invest, no experience in running a business, and, to be honest, I didn't even know where to start. But something in me clicked that day. I wasn't happy with my current situation, and I had nothing to lose. I started by brainstorming ideas. I knew I wanted to create something people would find valuable, but I didn't know what. After countless hours of research, I came across the idea of selling custom t-shirts online. It seemed like a good idea because it didn't require a massive upfront investment, and there were plenty of platforms that allowed you to design and sell without needing to handle the inventory yourself. I thought, I could do this. It's simple. I didn't have any experience in design, but I had always loved graphic art and spent a lot of time experimenting with different software as a hobby. I figured I could learn on the go. I also wasn't the best at marketing, but I had seen countless examples of businesses thriving by simply leveraging social media. It felt like a good place to start. So, I took a leap. The first few weeks were a blur. I spent hours creating designs, learning how to set up an online store, and figuring out how to get people to actually see my shirts. The learning curve was brutal. I remember spending hours on YouTube watching videos on how to use design software, how to set up my store, and how to create engaging social media content. I was literally teaching myself everything from scratch. But then, something incredible happened. I made my first sale. It wasn't much, just a single shirt. But to me, it felt like I had just won the lottery. Someone had actually found my designs interesting enough to buy one. That moment of validation was worth every second of the struggle I had been through. I remember sending a thank you message to the customer, even though I didn't know them. I was just so excited to see that someone else believed in my work. With that first sale under my belt, I started to take things a little more seriously. I put more effort into marketing, tried different ad strategies, and began reaching out to influencers to promote my brand. My social media game was my biggest asset. I spent hours creating posts, engaging with my audience, and participating in relevant groups and forums to get the word out. The next few months were a roller coaster. Some days, I would make a few sales, and other days, I wouldn't sell a thing. I started running Facebook ads, but I had no idea what I was doing. My first ad campaign was a disaster. I spent a lot of money, but got no sales in return. It was incredibly discouraging, but I didn't give up. I learned from my mistakes and kept tweaking my strategy. Slowly but surely, I started to see more consistent sales. I reached a tipping point around 6 months and when I realized I could turn this side hustle into a full-time gig. By this time, I had made enough money to cover my bills and still have some left over. I could see the potential, but I had to make a big decision, quit my job and go all in, or stay safe and keep working my 9-to-5. I remember talking to my best friend about it. He was the voice of reason, always reminding me of the risks involved. What if it doesn't work out? What will you do if it fails? He asked. And those questions kept me awake at night. But deep down, I knew I couldn't stay in that safe, boring job forever. If I didn't take the leap now, I might never do it. I had to give it a shot. So, I made the decision. I quit my job. The first few months of being a full-time entrepreneur were tough. I spent every waking hour building my brand, improving my designs, and trying new marketing strategies. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and some days it felt like I was running in place. But I stuck with it. I refined my approach, learned from my failures, and kept pushing forward. Slowly, my business grew. One of the best things that happened to me was joining a network of other entrepreneurs. There's something powerful about connecting with people who are going through the same struggles. We shared advice, tips, and experiences, and it made the whole journey feel less lonely. I learned so much from the group: how to scale my business, how to handle customer complaints, and how to balance work and personal life. Eventually, I reached a point where I could hire help. I brought in a few part-time employees to help with design and customer service. This was a huge step. It meant I was no longer doing everything myself, and it allowed me to focus on the bigger picture. I started exploring new avenues, like expanding my product line and investing in influencer marketing. The growth of my business was exponential after that. I started getting more media coverage, and even some celebrities wore my shirts. My designs were being seen by hundreds of thousands of people, and my brand was recognized in ways I never thought possible. What had started as a small side hustle turned into a full-blown business. Fast forward to today, And I'm living the dream I once thought was impossible. My business is thriving. I'm financially independent, and I'm doing something I'm truly passionate about. It hasn't been easy, but every single challenge was worth it. The struggle, the late nights, the failures, they all taught me invaluable lessons. I don't say any of this to brag. I'm just a regular person who took a risk and followed my passion. But the one thing I can tell anyone who is in a position like I was is this: you'll never know what you're capable of unless you take that leap. The road won't be smooth, and you will face a ton of obstacles. But if you keep going, you'll find a way to make it work. So, if you're thinking about starting your own business, don't wait for the perfect moment, because it doesn't exist. There's no right time. The best time to start is now. If you believe in yourself and are willing to put in the work, anything is possible. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth it. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.